Hello, welcome everybody to Tuesday's webinar. And today we have Stephen Burns. We're going to let some people come into the webinar. We're at 31 right now, and we're expecting to have quite a few more people than that. So hang tight for a couple of seconds, and I'll be back online in a few seconds here. Thanks. And it seems like Steve's a pretty popular guy. This is great. Okay, we're already up to 84 people. Steve said he was a little nervous today, but we're going to try and make him as calm as possible. So this is great. Okay, coming up on the 100 mark here. Come on, let's see if we can get 100 people in. That would be fantastic. And again, we have Stephen Burns, digital artist. We've known Steve for a very, very long time. And he's a big Wacom user, big Wacom fan, and we're really excited to have him on. So just a few more minutes and then we'll get started. All right, so let's get started with the webinar. My name is Doug Little, and I'm with the community team here at Wacom. And I have a bunch of my colleagues online helping out today as well. Peter, Tom, Shireen, and Elizabeth. We're all part of the community team, and we're happy to have you with us today to listen to Stephen Burns, who's a longtime friend of Wacom. So normally our sessions last about an hour. I think this one is scheduled to go about an hour and a half, and then we can have Q&A after that. If you do have a question, please put it in the Q&A at the lower part of your screen. It's kind of right in the middle there, and I'll be asking Stephen questions every now and then, interrupting him, make sure he's not too nervous. So that'll be helpful for Stephen. We can't answer all of your questions, especially with this many people, but we'll try to do our best. And this Zoom session is being recorded, so you can pick it up on YouTube later today. So let me give you a brief intro to Stephen. So Stephen, we've known Stephen for a long time, and I was checking out his website the other day, and he's done so much stuff, it's crazy. So I'm just gonna keep this as brief as possible. Steve is an Adobe education leader, and he's been teaching digital art for a very, very long time, over 25 years, in fact. And he also teaches at the college level. He teaches at the Golden West College and Otis College of Art and Design in San Diego. And he does a lot of corporate stuff as well. He's instructed at Disney, Sony Entertainment, and a lot more. He's also president of the San Diego Photoshop Users Group, and he's still very active in that regard. Stephen is also a frequent contributor on Photoshop Cafe. We had a webinar not too long ago with our friend Colin Smith, and Steve works with him. And he's also does a lot of workshops around the San Diego area on 3D art, digital manipulation, and things like that. He's also an author. I don't know how he finds the time to do all this stuff, but he's also done quite a few books, over a dozen from what I can see. And his latest book is entitled 3D Photoshop for Creative Professionals. And he told me the other day that he's currently working on another book, but he really can't discuss that right now. But maybe he'll talk a little bit about it later, but I can't say anything about it. As an artist, he's a great artist as well, and his art has been shown at numerous galleries and museums around the world, and he still finds time to do 3D commission work as well. So he's currently an active artist as well, which is super exciting. And I think now I'm going to hand it over to Steve, and he's going to talk about 3D art design in Photoshop. He'll be using LightWave, Zbrush, Photoshop, and Substance Painter. So Steve, take it away and welcome. I think you're on mute, Steve. Steve, you're muted.
Unmute. Now you can hear me.
Now we can hear you.
Okay, excellent. Don't know why it automatically goes to mute. But thank you so much, guys, for having me. Thank you, Wacom. Thank you. A huge thanks to Adobe as well. I'm an Adobe educational leader as well. Basically, that means I get to fly around the world and do presentations and lectures on how I create with the products, utilizing some of Adobe products. I'm also a Wacom Pro artist, so I was one of the guys that went into the studios and to the professional industry to actually train artists on how to utilize the Wacom product to better their workflow. So thank you so much again for having me. This is great. This is fun. Thank you all you guys for being here. I know you guys are pretty busy, and I'm just great that you decided to be here to share this experience with us. All right, so let me share a little bit more as to who I am. And I have a Behance site. Now, if you have an Adobe Creative subscription, Creative Cloud subscription, you have Behance. Behance, what is Behance? If for those of you who may not be familiar with it, Behance is Facebook for artists. And it's outstanding. There's some absolutely top-notch artists on the Behance site. Now, I have it currently showing you here. I thought I would start this off with here, and then I'll share with you my website very quickly. But basically, this is some of the categories that I utilize. I'll start off with my book, my last book, 3D Photoshop for Creative Professionals, which is kind of what today's presentation is going to be about. How I use a variety of programs to create a story or to create my concept. I tell you what, before I go to the book, I'll start here since I'm going to start talking about creating a concept. So let's go to this category here where I'm utilizing a variety of tools: Substance Painter, Photoshop, LightWave, Zbrush, and that's what I'm going to share with you today. Now, what I've done is I've kind of created the piece already. So I'm going to reverse engineer it so that you guys understand kind of my workflow in all of this mess. And then if they have me back on again, then I can do something a little more focused, where I can actually create in front of you. But all of these that you see here were created with a combination of ZBrush, Photoshop. There's a combination of photo painting and 3D involved here. And again, you can see this when you go to my website. I was also part of the Adobe Twitch team. And here's something I created for them where the buildings are basically 2D. The background is kind of painted in with 2D techniques using a paintbrush and/or photographic information. And then the starship was created in LightWave and brought that into the 3D layers. So what I'm hoping to do is kind of inspire you guys today in terms of kind of a different workflow. Here's another example. This example here, I started partly in Poser. It's kind of, a lot of you guys probably remember that. Then I brought it into ZBrush, modified it, and then brought it back into Photoshop to create this. And this is unfinished, by the way, but you kind of get to see the workflow that I'm using here. Here's another example.
Steve, sorry to interrupt. Are you sharing those right now? Because are you sharing the things you're talking about, or?
Oh, I gotta wait a minute. I thought the screen was already shared.
Well, somebody just chimed in that they couldn't see them. Now they said that I can see them.
So. Good. I apologize, okay, gotcha. Everybody.
Oh no, that's all right.
All right. That's weird because I shared the screen before we actually started, and then all of a sudden they just blanked out. Very weird. Okay. All right. So I'll start. I'll just go back a little bit, and I'll just show the images. So in the beginning, there we go. So this is a piece created in ZBrush as well as Photoshop. Digital painting in Photoshop. Some of the 3D aspects are brought in from ZBrush. Here's another example where the building was created in 2D with digital painting applied, and then of course the starship created in LightWave. As I go down here, this is where I left off here before I found out I wasn't really sharing the screen. This was created in ZBrush, a little bit of Poser as a start, and then brought into ZBrush, modified it, brought it in, unfinished piece. Okay, and there is the building there. All right, so this here was all 2D. It's mostly digital painting. just kind of give you an idea of kind of my skill sets here. Here's another piece that was created along with this one here, was also created in the Adobe Twitch. I was one of the presenters there, as I mentioned earlier. Is another example using Adobe Twitch and Mixamo and Zbrush. And then, of course, we go into other concepts we're playing around with. So ever since I started my books, and I've written quite a number of books, and I'll share those in a little bit. Actually, I'm going to share with you guys my latest book, okay, which is 3D Photoshop for the Creative Professional. And
Hey,
the
Steve.
book, yes, sir.
Sorry to interrupt again, but can you share your screen, not the image of you working, but your actual screen share?
All right. Did it not share? Is it sharing now?
It is now, yes.
Okay,
Yep.
that's really bizarre.
Yep. Now you got it.
Well,
Sorry to interrupt you.
All right, good. That's really strange. Why in the world are things cutting off and cutting on? Okay, cool. All right, now, so once again, we're looking at the book, 3D Photoshop for Creative Professional. And what I'm about to share with you here, now this is by Focal Press. The publisher is Focal Press. Everything that you're going to see here is actually created in Photoshop 3D. This book was a challenge to see just, how far 3D and Photoshop can actually go. When I'm a beta tester for Adobe, so when I actually started sharing some concepts I was creating, the engineers were asking me, well, what program did you create this in? I say, I created it in Photoshop. And I get this exclamation point saying, you did this in Photoshop? I said, yeah. So I sent them the files because they didn't believe me. So I did a whole book on it, how to actually custom create 3D objects. Everything you see here was custom created in Photoshop. It was textured, rendered, modeled in Photoshop. But I've always said it's fascinating with 3D. I think I started with 3D with, I'm trying to remember the program, with Bryce. Guys remember Bryce, the 3D program that creates terrain and planets and stuff like that? Very slow application. Even to this day, it's very slow. But behance.net, okay, / Stephen Burns. That's my first and last name. PHEN for Stephen, and then Burns, BRNS. So behance.net / Stephen Burns. You can go directly and see this stuff yourself. This is another example. All this is done in the book. Just how far you can really go with 3D and Photoshop. I use quite a bit of the products. In terms of the Wacom products, I use a Cintiq 22. That's actually what I'm working on now. You can probably see that displayed on the visuals here. And I'm going to give you a little bit of my workflow with this as well. Let me go to my website here. Now, on my website, if you go to books and DVDs, you get to see, here's my newest book, 3D Photoshop, the Creative Professionals. Click on it. You get to see all the books that I've produced and worked on. It's all right there. So, and I like writing books. It's kind of, it kind of forces me to kind of think about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and all that stuff. Thank you, JS1000. I've got a Twitch crowd here too, and they're interacting. All right, now let's kind of go into, now chromeillusion.com is my website. You guys are welcome to go to that as well, and check that out. All right, so how about if we go on into the presentation? I'm gonna go into Photoshop. Now, just keep in mind, this piece is not finished. Okay, I kind of started it a little bit late, pulled it together very quickly, but I will finish it up, but I'm going to do some of it with you today. I'm going to reverse engineer this so that you guys can kind of see how I'm thinking and where my workflow is going and so forth. All right, so. And if you have any questions, just type it in there. They'll stop me and then ask me the questions right away. I like to get that dialogue going. So remember, it's about telling a story here, right? About using our tools to tell a story. So I figured I wanted to do something like the monster coming from underneath the terrain, kind of like a subterranean creature or something. And that's what I have pulled together here. So what we're looking at here is a combination of several different programs: Zbrush, LightWave, Photoshop, and Substance Painter. So I'm using those programs always. Love Substance Painter because it's just like Photoshop. It's just like Photoshop. And I'm going to talk about how I'm utilizing my Wacom pen. Now, if you take a look at my pen, I'm using their latest, greatest, which is the, I think it's called the 3D art pen. And it has 3 buttons on it. Now, your standard stylus, and I'll share that with you as well. Your standard stylus only has 2 buttons. All right, so I'm going to share with you how I set this stuff up to work in terms of my workflow. What's the beautiful thing about the Wacom products is once I set preferences for every program on my system, it goes to the preferences on the fly when I'm jumping into that program. Let's break this down a little bit. Let's take a look at our layers. All right, I'm going to pull this down so we can see all of our layers. Here is my 3D layer. I put that into its own separate group. And if I turn that off and on, you can see that you know, the visuals come on and off. Go ahead and turn that back on again. Now, I'll also have debris in here, which is also created of 3D objects. I created the debris in LightWave, and I'll actually show that to you as well. Okay, so if I go down, see what this is. This is our more debris for the background in its own separate layer, and that's pretty much painted in. And then, of course, our background back here. I like to keep everything organized in layer groups. I think that's critical. I mean, naming every single layer is kind of a pain. So what I do is I actually group them and name the groups and keep organized that way. All right, let's go ahead and turn that on. And let's see. No questions on Twitch. Cool. All right, now, going up to here, I've got more 3D objects. You can see some of the 3D objects there, not yet integrated into the scene, but you can see some of the explosions happening in the background and so forth.
We already have some questions on Zoom.
Okay, well, go ahead and ask them, and then we'll kind
Sure.
of get that dialogue going.
Some are a little easy, some are a bit harder. What pixel density do you usually work at?
Okay, so that's an excellent question. It depends on what you're doing. If you're working for the industry, you're probably going to be working at like a 1920 by 1080, something like a film resolution. If I'm working out, a lot of what I do also is for fine art, personal. You know, I do client stuff too, but if I do fine art personal like this, I'll have a tendency to work in a higher resolution because I'm going to want to print out a big poster size of this print. So as you already know, the rule is at the size you want to print at, it must be 300 pixels per inch. So I might start off with something like a 20 by 24 at 300 ppi. I've got a pretty beefy computer. I've got the new Ryzen Alienware that has the Threadripper 16-bit processor and lots of RAM in it. So that really helps out. But if RAM is an issue and processor is an issue, you can easily get away with a 12 by 18 inch at 300 ppi. You should be able to work pretty comfortably with that.
Okay, cool. Next question from the same gentleman. He owns an Intuos tablet, but he's wondering when one should switch to a dedicated Wacom display, like a Cintiq.
Oh gosh, anytime you want. In fact, the question the question actually is, what is easier, the tablet or the display? The display is much easier, much more intuitive, a lot less setup. Because now you're working as if you're working like a paintbrush to a canvas. It's right there. It's the hand, the technique is right there in front of you. Whereas the tablet disconnects that workflow just a little bit, in that you're not drawing on the very thing and seeing the technique happening on the very thing in front of you, which is with a Cintiq, it's going to be the monitor. I would say any time is the time to switch. The pad is beautiful because you can take it to a cafe and work on your laptop or work on some of my friend's computer. That's really convenient. But if budget is not an issue, go for that Cintiq.
Cool. Another quick question. Somebody is interested in your books, and they're wondering if you've done a 3D book that's kind of dedicated to the photography industry.
All right. Now that's an interesting question. I was raised as a photographer. My certificate is in photography. I went to school for it. I was a professional photographer for over 20 years and still am. My skill sets transitioned toward digital painting and 3D at, well, I started with painting in school, and then I got into photography, fell in love with photography and took that as a career. And now I'm back to painting again. So yeah, it's, I don't think I answered this question yet, did I? I lost my, what was the question again?
You answered it. They were just wondering if you've created any books for photography.
Right. No books that specialize to photographers. Although my books use photography quite a bit, all of them do. I use photography as part of the workflow in building all of my scenes. In fact, this Saturday, I'm teaching a 4-week class that'll be based on that. And I'll talk more about that as well. So I just want to give a little bit of a close-up of the hand here. All right, so what I'm gonna break it down here. I'm gonna show you how I started this, and I'm gonna go into Zbrush to do so. There's our hand. Now we imported this in from Zbrush. Now for those of you who, I want to assume that everybody knows what Zbrush is, but I know everybody doesn't know what Zbrush is. Zbrush is 3D for sculptors, right? The guys that put in the big clay and mold the clay into these magnificent art pieces. That is what this is. This object is clay. I can mold it. I have a stylus right here to mold that clay, right? So I'm gonna zoom in, get a little closer so you can see what I've done here. So I've created all this texture, the hand and everything, based off of, out of a clay figure, out of a clay ball, right? And then, I'll show you some of the tools that I use and the brushes that I use to create this as well. So this is where I started. I knew the concept I wanted to create for the Wacom team. I wanted to create something simple because I only had an hour and a half to do this, right? So I couldn't get way complicated with this. So I decided, well, why don't we do something like a hand coming out of the ground, but do it all in 3D. Oh, I can use ZBrush for that, right? So I knew the concept was going to be the hand reaching up out of the ground. I had no idea what the hand would, what it would look like, but I love the direction that it went in. And then when I'm actually creating the stuff in the process, I'm posting this on the Facebook, and I get all types of feedback from everybody else too. So it helps me to kind of decide how to create, where to go with this. Now, this is 3D for sculptors, and we've got all types of brushes, right? So I'm going to right click on the monitor, and I'm going to click on what this brush is, a standard brush. I'm going to click on it, and it's going to show me all the brushes I have available for me in ZBrush. And I've got a lot of them, a clay brush, Claybuildup, and all that. I started with the Claybuildup brush on this scene. Okay, so I started with the Claybuildup, and then I progressed to other brushes. So what the Claybuildup does is this. Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and target it right there. Now I've just targeted the Claybuildup. I'll go to a portion of the image I haven't really quite right about there. This is what it does here. If I start to paint, see that? It's painting, it's creating the 3D shape in 3 dimensions. I can pull that out more. See that? It's pulling all that out. That was how I was creating this arm. So once I got the basic hand structured, then I came in here and I started to mold things out, right? And it's fast. ZBrush is the program that is the most magical next to ZBrush. It's the program to pretty much revolutionize the industry next to next to Photoshop, I wanted to say, right? And then in addition, you have to have this stylus. You have to have it. I'm sorry guys, but our technology has gotten to the point where we're growing, you know, and as we grow, tools will grow, right? So I'm just building up, and look how fast I'm painting. That's how fast ZBrush is. You don't even have to have a fast computer for ZBrush. It's just designed in such a way that it just takes advantage. Now, all this texture that I'm creating on here is going to help me. It's going to help me with creating wrinkles and stuff like that. Well, let's say, for example, I want to actually smooth this out a little bit. I don't want it as wrinkly as I have it here. What if I want to smooth this out? Well, holding the shift key down the keyboard changes my brush. You notice the brush kind of turned blue there. I'm kind of moving it around so you can see it easier. All right, it's turned blue. That means I'm now in my smoothing mode. And if I hold it down and start to paint, look, I can smooth this out now. All right. All right. So I can smooth this out. Then I can release it and I can go back to putting more textures in if I want to. Okay. So let's say I want some veins in here or something. I'll usually start adding veins when most of the model is kind of complete with the clay brush. I have it smoothed out, looking fairly complete. Then I'll start to put in the veins. I'll use a different brush for that. So I'm going to right click here, and here's my little brush option. Or if you want to, right up here in the top left-hand corner is my brush. If I click on it, then I have more brushes. All right. On my pen, a right click is my bottom button. Now this is like I said, the 3D art pen. So it gives me 3 buttons and I've got them set up in certain ways. Let me share with you how I have the top button set up. The top button is set up to actually navigate between 3 monitors. Right now, I'm working on 3 monitors. All right, the main one that I'm looking at is the one that you're seeing, but I've got 2 28-inch BenQ 4K monitors to my right and to my left. And what I did was I set this up for the top brush. In fact, how about if I go to get the Wacom properties? Maybe I can show you that way just real quick. There. Okay, so there's my Wacom properties. So here I've got my Photoshop, I've got the Substance Painter, and I don't think I have ZBrush set up. So this will be good. So you guys can watch me set up a new program. So whatever program I have open, this Wacom properties is going to see. I already got Photoshop, I already got Substance Painter. I want ZBrush now. So if I click here, scroll on down, there's ZBrush right there. It's open so it sees it. And it sees all of my other programs as well, but we're just interested in ZBrush, right? So let's go ahead and click OK. There's ZBrush. We want to, now you'll notice I've got several different types of pens. I've got other Wacom pens, and it recognizes all those pens as well. And if I go back to the left again, it'll go back to where I was, right? So if I go back to my Pro 3D pen, I think that's the one there. I want to just make sure I've got it. Yep.
Yeah, and speaking of the 3D pen, somebody was asking how you set the buttons. Do you have any particular ways you set the buttons?
Yeah, and that's what I'm getting ready to show you right now.
Great.
And that was why I brought you into the Wacom properties. So here's my 3D pen. Now I'm going to start with ZBrush, and I'll go into Photoshop and show you how I have it set for that. All right. So in ZBrush, I'm going to take a look at my buttons. There's a picture of it right there. I got the very, very bottom button, the middle button, and the top button. The top button is set for toggle display. All right. So what that does, if I go to the tablet, toggle display, it's listed there. The reason I have that, because I'm working on my Cintiq, I want my pen to be pretty much focused on the Cintiq, which means my brush or my stylus or my mouse can't get to my other 2 monitors, right? That is what that top button is for. I click it. I've got 3 monitors, right? I've got 3 of these. Got like these many. So when I click that button, next I'm going to click here. Now watch what happens. I click the button, it goes away. Now it's over to my left monitor. I click it again, the top button. Now it's over here to my right monitor. I click it one more time. It comes right back to this monitor. I can work here. And that is set, the top button for toggling through all of my displays is universal. Okay, is universal for all of my programs. In fact, I have a tendency to go to all programs right there and make sure that top button is set for toggle display. Okay, let's go back to ZBrush. The bottom button is a right click. All right, so that I can, if I'm in ZBrush, I can right click and get my sub menu. No matter, where I'm sitting, I can right click. That's really handy. I keep that universal for all the programs. All right, now for ZBrush, the middle button is set for resizing my brush. I also have that universal for Photoshop and Substance Painter. So if I go back, let's go back and get the Wacom properties. Let me go back to the pen. Okay, I'm clicking on the pen. And the middle button is set by default for zoom. I instead want to set that up for a shortcut, because a shortcut for accessing I should say the brush properties to resize the stylus or resize the cursor is the space bar inside of ZBrush. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to right over here to the keyboard. Okay. I'm going to go over to keystroke, and then I'm going to hit the space bar, and it records the space bar right here. Now, when done, I'm going to click OK. All right. So there's the space bar. Now, if I go back into ZBrush, hit the middle button, it brings that palette up. Now, and then I can go ahead and adjust my brush size or adjust the focal. See that middle button? That's basically giving you the feathered edge. They call it the focal shift. It's giving you the feathered edge. Okay. All right. So then I can come back to here. If I want this brush to be smaller, I'm going to bring it down a little bit smaller, and then I can, of course, start working again. Or shift key. Now I want to add veins. We started talking about veins here before we got sidetracked. So my bottom button is my right click, which allows me to rotate my model. And what I'm doing is the pen is hovering above my pad while I'm holding down the right click button. That's the bottom button is a right click by default. So if I right click and rotate, it will rotate it. If I want to zoom in and out, I'll hold the control key. And as I'm holding down again, that bottom button, the control key, that zooms in and out. And again, the pen is not touching the pad, it's not touching the monitor. It's hovering above it. If I hold down the Alt key, that gives me the pan while I'm holding down that bottom button, right? Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and start adding in some veins in here somewhere. I would do it down here just for the fun of it. All right, I'm gonna go to a different brush, which is going to be middle button, target the brush, standard brush, and I'm going to adjust this. If I start to paint now, I got these big veins. I don't want big veins, right? I want some nice small little veins. So Command Z, zoom in close, holding down that bottom button, control, and the control key is held down at the same time. And ZBrush, if I want to fit everything into view, it's the F key to fit everything into view. Just hitting F on the keyboard. So that's getting on the inside. Pull this on over, rotate a little bit, go to my brush and bring that down. Maybe I want to bring the focal shift a little tighter too, so I get more of a rounded looking veins. Go back, bring down the size of the brush, so that's about right. And then I can start to add veins, right? Start to add my little veins in there. Got the teeny weeny cute little veins. Okay, so that's the one size vein. I want something a little smaller. So hit that again. See, it's real fast. So go back to the middle brush. I want to adjust my focal shift, but I also want to adjust the sizing down smaller. Yeah, so I can start, and I can build it up real high in some places and release the pressure off the stylus, and it becomes thin. So the pressure sensitivity is critical. So that's to make the brush a little larger, so you see what I'm talking about. If I press light, or if I press really hard, it gets real thick, right? So I can control the sizing as well as the depth of the pressure based on the depth of the piece based on the pressure of the pen. So that's how I did it. So once I start creating our little veins, there we go.
Someone's also asking while you're doing that if you ever
Sure.
use pressure to adjust size as well.
Yeah, and that's exactly what this is doing right now.
Got it.
The pressure is adjusting the size. I'm to control that. Say for example, I really don't want it to adjust the size that much. I just control it by altering the size of the pen or the stroke. So I like to work with veins somewhere around like a 5 diameter. Start to add in little veins here, like so forth. It gives you an idea of what I'm doing. We've got other types of tools. If I click on the brush, there's one that everybody seems to love. I don't use it as much as some other artists, but this thing called snake hook. And if I hit the S key for the first letter of snake hook, it'll default. It'll only show those tools that represent that particular nomenclature. So my snake hook should be, where are you? There you go, it's right there. If I click that there, what snake hook does, I better make my brush a little bit bigger for this one. That works good. Let's go ahead and just rotate this around to the side and bring this on over the side. If I grab any of these pieces, it creates that type of an effect. It just snakes it out. All right. If I want to do horns, it snakes it out. All right. So if I want to put more horns on this guy, right on the side of his arm, this is not the way I recommend that you work. I'll try this over here. You can do that, right? The way I like to work in putting horns, I like to use a mask. In ZBrush, I can create masks. Now, this is not meant to be a ZBrush presentation. I'm just kind of giving you my workflow on how I start creating these 3D objects, organic 3D objects inside of ZBrush. Let's make this a little smaller. Now, if I hold the Shift key, remember, it smooths things out, all right? And in fact, I'll get in closer, okay? If I hold, once again, the Shift key, it smooths things out, right? So I can smooth out those veins now, right? So it looks a lot more natural. It looks like it should be part of the skin in there. Now, if I hold down, I'm going to say I'm going to make another. Let's bring that on over. So there's a horn there or a spike there. I'll make another spike. I want to control the shape of the spike. If I hold down the Command or Control key, it allows me to paint a mask, just like in Photoshop. So I want to make the brush a little smaller. Hold the Control key down, and I can paint a mask. Oops. Let's do this again. I'm going to paint a mask. That's going to represent my horn, all right? Remember, black conceals and white reveals. So in this case, black conceals, and anything that's clear is the areas that I can affect with any of these brushes. So right now, I want to affect that masked area. So if I hold down the Control key and paint, that gives me the mask. But if I bring the mouse outside my object, anywhere outside, and click and release, it reverses the mask. All right, do it again, it reverses. If I want these edges softened, so it's a subtle transition, when I actually make the horn, I simply tap right on it. And as many times as I tap, it's feathering the edge. It's like adding Gaussian blur to your masks in Photoshop, okay? Now, let's go ahead and make a horn. So I will rotate it a little bit, take it at the angle that I'm going to actually pull it from. Get in a little closer. Now I'm going to give it a different brush. Now remember, the clear areas are the only areas that's going to be affected. So if I click here and grab one more brush, which I like is the Topological Move brush or Move Topological brush, I'll make that larger. Again, all these, the buttons on my pen are set up in such a way that I can work fast. So now I would take it and just pull that out. Does that make sense? So I can pull this out a little bit more. Okay. And I want to soften that up. So bring the brush size down, shift, soften it up. You know, modify this, get some control here. And that's probably as far as I want to go, because I can go in there and modify it in other ways. Okay. All right. Now, once I get this, Control key again, which is our shortcut for the mask, right? Click and drag it, it goes away. Now I can go back to what? My Claybuildup brush, right? And continue working, right? So if I start using the Claybuildup brush, I can build this up at the top, right? It's 3D for sculptors. Cool. All right. So I've got some texture going in here. I'm going to pull that texture out because I want texture, because human beings have texture. We have texture all over our bodies, all over our faces. We just have to learn how that texture can be replicated in a 3D program. Now I want to sculpt into it. I want to start pushing things in, and that's simply holding the Alt key down. Alt key pushes things in, and I can start making the points. Now, other ZBrush users might see this and say, you know what, I've got a better way. Hey, I'll share it. There are other ways to do this. There are other ways I use to do this as well. Snake Hook may have been a good one. It may have given me a point right away, and then I could have added my my clay brush. And this is pretty much this is how I work. This is how I pretty much worked all day long using this tool. All right.
Hey, Stephen, somebody's asking about your transformation from traditional media to digital media. When did you make that, and was it a difficult transition for you?
Okay, great question. All right, so the transition. I fell in love with digital. I mean, I started as a traditional photographer. I started in the darkroom, right? I went to school working with enlargers and developer and fixer and stop bath and doing it the traditional way on gelatin silver print paper. I exhibited internationally my fine art, black and white landscapes and all of that stuff. But I saw what was going on. I got involved in this way before photographers got involved with this. I mean, I got involved with it when Photoshop was like version 2.5, and photographers were not on board. Artists were not on board. Artists to this day are still quite not on board with the digital, with digital art. They still working with and prefer to work with the canvas, the paper, the pencils, the pastels, whatever you have. The digital art revolutionized commercial art. Movies, commercials, short films, and of that sort. So digital has made it so much faster to produce. And I'm going to talk to you while I'm working here. I'm holding the Alt key just to continue to scope this down in the way that I want it. And then of course hold my Shift key. So basically, when I got into Photoshop, a friend gave me a copy of Photoshop. Eventually, it started with 2.5, but then eventually I upgraded to 3. That was when version 3 was when layers were introduced, and that intrigued me, and it really intrigued me what the possibilities were. So I got involved in this way before the general industry got involved with it, but I fell in love with it. I do this not because I have to keep up with the industry. I do this stuff because I love it. I seriously love this stuff. Digital tools, let me put it this way. For the first time in history, we have a device that can pull together all creative mediums that we know as human beings. The computer will do photography, write poems, novels, do architecture, draw blueprints, sculpt, paint. All creative mediums that we know as human beings can now be done in the computer. And that process it's producing a whole new breed of artists. People who will not pick up a paintbrush will now do it in Photoshop or Painter. People who will not pick up a chisel and hammer, the hammer out of alabaster or marble, will now do it in ZBrush, in programs like ZBrush. Okay, so it's producing a whole new breed of artists. You can produce work faster, more detailed than ever before. And it's an exciting time for me, I think, to be an artist. So, okay, let's stop playing in ZBrush. And we spent enough time in here. So that's basically what I did. Basically, if you go in here and take a look at the hands, and again, this hand is not finished, but it shows you where I was going with some of the text. I wanted to create this bumpy lizard-like texture in here. So I used, just to show you real quick, I'm going to go ahead and show you the brush. I just went in here. I'm going to use the standard brush, right? So you know it just does that, right? It's just, if I come over here and mess with the focal shift, which is just the feathering, you get a different type of a feel, see? So this is more modulated circular patterns here. This is a much more smoother feel. I use this to help pull out the general form of the piece. So even if I've got texture on there, this won't mess with the texture. It'll just pull it all out. It will mess with it a little bit, but it helps pull it all out. If I want to add that texture, then I go to the alpha right over here. If I click on the alpha, oh, I get all different types of textures. Let's try that one right there. Let's see if I paint. Wow, look at that. We got these teeny weeny. Oh, that's great. If I press harder, they're bigger dots. If I press lighter, they go teeny weeny, right? So that helps me to modify my brush a little bit, give it a different feel. It's the same brush, it's just that we modified the alpha, right? If I come over here to something different, let's go to that one right there. Let's make this brush a little bigger. Oh, wrong one. I'm gonna do that one there. There we go.
Hey, Steve, what file extension do you use when exporting a ZBrush file to open
Excellent.
it in Photoshop?
That's an excellent question. I'm going to show you.
Okay.
And I'm going to click. See, boom. Look at that texture. Isn't that cool? All right. So that question you just asked, I think it's about time to probably get out of ZBrush, and that'll be a good segue into getting out of ZBrush. OBJ stands for object. Created by Alias Wavefront, the people that originally created Maya. OBJ is the JPEG of the 3D industry. If you want reliability in all 3D programs, recognizing the 3D object that you made in your particular choice of 3D program, OBJ is a good choice to use. You got FBX, you have other file formats, they all do something different. But the most reliable, even Collada, DAE is its extension, the most reliable is going to be your OBJ. And I can save this out, and ZBrush calls this not a 3D object. ZBrush calls this 3D hand that I created, they call it a tool. So this hand is now called a tool. Instead of a 3D object, they chose to call it a tool. So just keep that in mind. I don't want to get into a whole ZBrush lecture here, which can easily happen. So let's get out of here. So if I want to export this tool, what I'm going to need to do, let's go right over here to my tool menu at the very top. And I've got an import and an export button right there, dead center. If I hit the export, boom. And let's see what formats that ZBrush will export to. Save as type. Oh, we got a bunch. OBJ, Go Z, which is the binary. We've got Maya, if you're working in Maya. We've got Web 3D standard. We've got an FBX if you're working with animation. OBJ extended. I'm not quite sure what that is. We've got the PLY, STL. STL is for 3D printing. I also do 3D printing. That's the format I would export this at. Or for 3D printing, you can export into one or two formats, STL or OBJ. All right, so I'm going to go to OBJ, standard OBJ. I'm going to go presentation files, my Wacom folder I did for today's presentation, and I'm going to put it into the folder called the hand export. And then rising hand, and then at the end, I'll call it new example, because that's the brand new one. And then target save. Okay, so the OBJ is being saved out, so done. Now, what I would do is I would bring this into a program called Substance Painter to texture it. Could I texture it here? Yes, I could, right? And I can even do the UV maps here. Substance Texture or Substance Painter does not create UV maps. And if you don't know what UV maps are, let me explain it this way. If I took, let's say my hand, I'm a 3D paint, the 3D model my hand. And if I want to draw and paint on a flat surface instead of on my 3D hand, I can take an X-Acto knife and get slices into the hand, peel the skin off, flatten it out in the paper, do my drawing and painting on to make my skin look the way I want it to, and then wrap it back around my 3D object hand. That's what a 3D map is, that flat sheet of paper. I've already exported the hand out into Substance Painter, and to save time, I'm just going to go there, which is right there. Okay, there we go. Now we're in Substance Painter. There's my hand. I exported this out as a OBJ. All right, I imported it in, and there's my hand, and I've got options now. This works just like, I'm going to click on the layers. This works just like Photoshop. Right now, we have no textures on here. Now over to, on the bottom, it's my shelf, which has my options. The tools that I'm going to use, the materials I'm going to use. I'm going to keep the materials available right now. What I'm going to do next is I need a layer, just like in Photoshop. You can't do anything in Photoshop without a layer, right? So somebody on Twitch here is asking Zimbo7, any Wacom employees here? Yes, Zimbo, they are right here listening to you. So if anybody on Twitch has questions for the Wacom team, they're here. They're right here. So he's asking any recommendations, preferably with a screen. Yes, your option is going to be the Cintiq. They have two versions. The one I'm working on right now is the Cintiq 22. Okay, it's the Cintiq 22. So that's the one I recommend. It's nice. It's nice and comfortable, and also it's not only comfortable in terms of your workspace, but it's not too big. I prefer a little bit bigger because I'm used to working on my BenQ monitors, which are like 28 and 32 inch is what I'm used to using. But 22 is perfect. It's perfectly fine. So I would highly recommend you guys kind of look into that. Not meaning to make this sound like a sales pitch, but I was just answering your question. Let's see. Yes, symbol. 22 inch. That's it. Cintiq 22. Okay, it looks like he sees it. So let's see. Any other questions here? I'm looking really close here. No, doesn't look like it. Okay, cool. All right, let's go on and go further. So inside, and your navigations here is exactly the same as Maya. Hold your Alt Option key down and left click and hold and drag. Right click and Alt zooms in, and Control and Option with the left click pans. If you're used to working in Maya, the shortcuts are the same as in Maya. Now let's go ahead and texture this thing. All right, so we need layers. Right over here, I have my layer, I have my texture set and my properties. Let me drink some water, and I'm gonna share with you what they are. It's a hot day in sunny San Diego today, so it's easy to get dehydrated. All right, so okay, so Zimbo is asking off of Twitch, if I have ever tried The Mobile Studio Pro. Yes, I have the Mobile Studio Pro. It's excellent. Because it's a self-contained computer and a Cintiq, and I can take it anywhere, to the cafe, do presentations, go to class and teach out of the classroom using my Mobile Studio Pro. It's beautiful. And I use a 16-inch. I recommend a 16-inch one. The 13 version is too small for my eyes. Maybe you're okay with that. I'm not. I need something larger. Ruscular3D on Twitch. It's clear there and sunny. Clear and sunny. Here's what I forget where you are, Ruscular. Okay. So I'm grabbing. I have material options. I've got smart materials, which is kind of like you drag them onto the objects, and they have really nice features. They basically apply everything at one time. Smart masks, environments. We'll talk about that just very quickly. But I'm gonna go to the materials. All right, let's have some more fun. We have no layers here. So I'm gonna make a new layer. Right up here, third icon from the left under the layers palette. Normally in Photoshop, to make a new layer and your options for those layers are on the bottom, right? They're the bottom right. Here on the Substance, they're at the top. So if I go to the third one from the left and click it, I just made a brand new layer, just like in Photoshop. All right, what can I do? Well, let's see. I've got a material here. I can select any of these materials. Let's select this one right down here at the bottom for the fun of it. It's going to, now I'm in my stamp tool. I don't want to be here. Just like in Photoshop, we have a stamp tool in Zbrush. If I go to the brush at the very top, that's our standard. Now there you go. It loads the brush. Let me see if I can, there we go. Click it again. There we go. Now that's the texture I want. It's not really the texture I want, but it's easier for you guys to see. I'm going to get in closer here. And now in Substance Painter, the shortcut for making your brush bigger and smaller is the Control right click, right? I'm using 2 fingers for that. Don't want to do that. So I go into the Wacom properties. I select Substance Painter. I go to toggle display stays at the top button, as I discussed before, but right in the middle, I've got Control right click. So now with this hand up in the air, see, look, only one hand, hold that middle button down, and now I can drag it left to right and then up and down, hard and soft, hard and soft. I do the same thing in Photoshop. And I'll share that with you as well. So here, if I start to paint, I can paint my texture on my 3D object, okay? So bring this around. All right, so I just want to, my intention isn't to show you how to do Substance Painter, but to kind of show you the workflow once again. So I'm going to say I want another texture on top of that one, just like in Photoshop. Add a new layer right above that one. Okay, in that layer, I'm going to want a different texture. Let's go for something like that. Oh, let's see, what else we got in here? I've got, oh, we'll do this one. Okay, rough, what is that called? Wood rough. So then I start to paint on top of that. Okay. All right. So I've got 2 textures. If I pull this around so you can see from the side, maybe it would be better this way. If I turn off the top layer, see? Turn off the bottom layer, see? Just like in Photoshop. Everything's contained in layers. Oh, guess what? I want to like blend layers into one another a little bit so I can see one layer. I can scratch through one layer to see through the bottom. We got mask, just like in Photoshop, and it's easier. You simply right click on a layer and fill with white mask. And there it is. Now, how do we control the brush? I want to paint with white or black, just like in Photoshop, right? So white reveals and black conceals. Let's see. So what I'm going to do is I've clicked on the layer mask, And then right down here, let's see, I should be, go to my paintbrush. And it should be down here we go. Okay, now it's seeing my brush in terms of grayscale. So I clicked on the mask, it's seeing it in grayscale, right down uniform color grayscale. Right now it's black, which means it's anticipating that I want to paint in black since the layer mask is white, obviously. All right, let's go to a different brush. Let's go to the brush, go find brushes, brushes. I think I passed it up. There they are, right in front of me. There we go. And we've got, I'll pull this up. I can kind of resize these panels here, like so.
Hey,
And
Stephen,
yes, sir.
when painting on a texture in Substance Painter, will the lines in the texture automatically line up with each other? Does that make sense? That was a question.
Okay, I think the question is if you create a UV map and when you paint on them, will everything line up correctly? Is that actually what you're asking?
Well, it's a written question, so I'm just
Well,
reading it as it came in.
all right.
But
And my question is to the user. Is
yes.
so the answer is yes?
Well, that's up to you.
Okay. So all right, and then JS1000, I'm going to answer your question in just a minute. Okay, so the way Substance Painter is working is when you create a 3D program, create your 3D object in a third-party 3D program, you need to apply UV maps to it. In other words, you need to define how the maps are going to overlap one another on your 3D object. I think that's going to help you the most in making sure everything lines up correctly. And when we get into LightWave, I'll show you that. Okay. But yes, but Substance Painter is outstanding in making sure everything is mapped out correctly so that everything overlaps. JS1000 from Twitch is asking, what's the difference between pen display and pen tablets? Pen display is the monitor. You draw and paint directly on the monitor. There's an eye-hand connection right there on the monitor. And the tablets are the standard, the flat tablets. That's a USB connection into your computer or a laptop that you can use all of the advanced techniques of the monitor display, but you can use your tablet to interchange between several different computers. Does that make sense? Because JS1000, you should have known that already. Okay, now, I'm getting a different brush. So I'm gonna go to, I'll go get one of these down here. It's these little scratchy brush things. I'm gonna click that. That's the brush, okay? Got a little scratch, see that little scratchy brush technique there? Oh, I kind of like that. So bring that up. See, I'm gonna get that technique. I'm gonna go ahead and bring this back down, right? And I'm editing the mask. And if I start, actually, I'm gonna bring this down a little smaller. See? So I'm painting it black, so it's taking away the visual aspects of the top mask to show through to the bottom. And this is how you can create like weather worn effects and stuff like that. Get a brush that has that scratchy type of a feel to it. So it looks like the weather is just wearing this away. And if I want it really subtle, right, I can just make the brush smaller and press lighter. All right. So again, we don't have enough time to kind of go into all these different programs and give you a detailed explanation of how to use them. Maybe we'll do something like that later on. Okay. So all I'm doing is taking away the visuals of the top layer, showing you to the bottom layer. So hopefully that makes sense. And I can adjust the layers. Put this one on top, just like Photoshop. Oh, now that one's covering it because it has no mask. The bottom with the mask, I can click and drag it, put it on top of that one, just like Photoshop. Really nice program. Up here at the top, you notice these are my brush options here for the flow, the stroke, the sizing, but I've already have that set for my bottom button. The middle button right there, where I set that for making the brush bigger and smaller, right? So I can adjust that here. I don't have to go up here playing with this stuff. So that's the brilliance and the convenience of the Wacom technology. So if I bring it down smaller, bigger, small, or if I want soft edge, hard edge, soft, hard edge, soft edge, hard edge, soft edge, I can control that way. Also the technique of my stroke. Bring it down smaller. This is much subtler. Come over to here and start to erase away with this. Okay. All right. Some things you may need to adjust, but you know, this does a lot of the work for you. Right there. Okay, so once I texture it, now I want to bring it into Photoshop. I go into Photoshop. Now you can see this one's already completed. So I'm going to go into Photoshop, Command 0, pop it to full view. But I've got debris that I want to bring in there. So I have another program for that one. Let's go play with LightWave. That's kind of my 3D program of choice. So we'll go into, let's go get LightWave real quick. Yes, I thought I had it open. I may not have had it open. I do not. All right, so I will go open it now. Let's go back into here. All right, let's go open up LightWave. And I'll show you how I created the debris. So what I did was I used an effects engine to create my debris. Okay, so there's the LightWave interface, 3D interface. There's my camera, my lights, my image-based light here. Nothing's in there. Let's go open up my last project. So I'm open recents and the brick final, LightWave scene. And I'm going to kind of show you what I did here, because we've got about 25 minutes or 20 minutes left. Plenty enough time. All right, and it's coming up. We'll give it a quick little moment. So let me explain to you what I've actually done in this scene. Let me go back over here and get the message. Yes. This is looking for the bricks LightWave object, which is, very interesting. Why would it not find that? So I think LightWave, that's the asterisk because I'm in the wrong folder. That's why. All right, go back down to here, go to Wacom, go to my objects, and there's my bricks, and open. Okay, cool. So I created an animation based on physics. So I took a flat box, and then I told LightWave to take that flat box and fracture it up into pieces of glass or rubble or debris or whatever you want to call it. And in this example, I told it to break it up into a debris of 100 individual objects. So it's fractured up. We know that because we can see it. We can see the fracturing in there. Now I could turn that off. Right up here is an option. It's showing me the actual wireframe. I can go to just solid only. So you actually see in the solid marble looking object. Okay. But if I go back to the fractured version, you get to see the individual 100 individual fractured pieces. Now, in addition, let me go to my effects option. I've got I'm going to turn off the enable dynamics because I don't want it to show you the effect just yet. What I did was I made a ball. Okay. So if I come down and select the ball, it's already selected, and I move it up, the ball actually goes through the object. So I told LightWave to, when it hits that object, I want you to break it up into pieces. That object's going to be your collision object. The bricks is going to be your parts object. And then when that ball hits it, it's going to fly up into a million different pieces, flying up into the air, right? So let's turn on the dynamics and let's play it. and we sit back and we entertain ourselves going, let's see what's going, oh, wow, look at that. It's just exploding into all these little parts. Now, I could be a little more precise about all these parts that I'm breaking up, but for now, this works. And I can move it around, right? So as it breaks that up, I'm gonna let it run again, right? And I can move it around it, kind of take a look at this and say, oh, okay, that's some possibilities. Oh yeah, this could work just fine. But I can play around with it and kind of like just bring it up to here, go from this angle. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that's okay. Not bad. Right? Okay. So thanks, Zimbo7. Zimbo from Twitch is saying that hand looks great. It's not finished yet, but thank you. All right. Okay. So this is LightWave3D. So I'm going to bring this down. So what I'm going to do is I save these out. Now what I can do, this is all frames right here, right down the bottom is the actual frames per second. And I can decide which frame I want to save out. Now I saved out several of these. So in other words, I can say, okay, I want, for my hand, I might want to get something like this, or maybe something like this, or maybe something like this, or maybe something like this. Okay, I'll bring it back further. I might decide, you know what? Let's do a wide spread like that. I think that'll be great for some of the debris in the background, right? All right, so there's a wide spread of my debris. All right, now what do I do from here? How do I get it out of LightWave and into Photoshop? Remember we talked about OBJ being the JPEG of the 3D world? We just need to export this particular frame as an OBJ. So I'll come over to my Save menu. I'm going to say Save Transformed Object, and it's going to go back to a folder that I've already been working in inside my, actually I'm going to go to my desktop. I'm going to go to my presentation files and go to the Wacom presentation, which is the folder I'm drawing from right now. I have a folder called OBJ Export already, so I'm going to double click it. And you can see all the different exports that I have. I got the cracked ground 1 through 4, and they all represents a different frame number in LightWave. So I'll make a new folder. I'll make a brand new one, and I'll call this one Cracked Ground 005. Okay. Well, we click .obj. You don't have to say that, but that's it. Forgot the D in here. Okay, cool. All right, now I'm gonna go inside the folder and I will call this one Cracked Ground 005, okay? And click Save, okay? So now it's exported. Now, it's not gonna work. The reason it's not gonna work is I just realized, what do I have selected? I got the ball selected instead of the debris. Duh, I wasn't paying attention. So let's go get rid of let's go get the bricks. Oh, now the bricks are selected. Now we can go do it again. So save transformed object, save it as cracked ground number 5. I'm going to replace it, save it. Yes, definitely save over it, overwrite it. Done. Okay, so once that's done, I can get out of Photoshop, not Photoshop, get out of LightWave into Photoshop. I want to get into Photoshop. Okay, so let's go back to Photoshop. There's my hand. Let's see, I'm gonna just make, I'm gonna just target this folder way up here. In Photoshop, you have a 3D engine built inside it, okay? I'm gonna pull this on up and pull my properties open. And if I go to the 3D panel, and you're gonna find all your panels underneath your Windows menu, 3D and so forth, it's all there. So target the 3D panel. Before I do so, I need to make a blank layer. I'll make one blank layer so it's in there, so it realizes it's in two-dimensional space, right? Instead of 3-dimensional space. So currently we're in 2-dimensional space. If I go over to the 3D menu, it sees it as 2-dimensional space, and wants to know what should I do with this two-dimensional space, up here, I've got options, right? What I want to do is I want to go get the file that I created, that I exported, and click create. Now, where is that file? Okay, it's inside a folder called OBJ export, right? So Wacom and OBJ exports right there, double click it, and there they are. And there's my crack ground number 5 that I created, right? So if I double click that folder, there's the crack ground number 5 LWO. Okay, I made another mistake. I kind of jumped ahead of myself. Did I save that out as an OBJ? Remember, OBJ is a JPEG of the 3D world. I didn't save it as a JPEG. I saved it as a LWO. It would be nice if the 3D engine in Photoshop recognized LWO objects, which is light wave object, but it doesn't. So I'm going to leave this open right here. I'm going to go back to LightWave, and I'm going to have to go back. I'm going to have to go into the modeler. So LightWave's got a modeler. I'm going to go open up the modeler. And the reason it has separate, as it has a modeler compared to an animator, is it works faster that way. So I'm going to go Command 0, open it up. There's the cracked ground number 5. It defaulted back to my cracked ground folder, which is number 5. OBJ sees the LWO, click it, open it up. It's looking for a JPEG called bricks. I don't give a darn about that. So I'm going to click, there it is. See, there's my bricks. So if I look at this, there are all my bricks in as a LWO, right? Light wave object file. I'm going to clean this up a little bit, in that I've got some 1-point and 2-point polygons that will do me no good at all. So I'm going to select the 1 points and select and just delete those. I'm going to go to my, I've got a 1-point and 2-point. There we go. For the polygons, I'm going to target those. That'll do me no good. And I'm going to delete those. So I have a cleaner mesh. The rules are in the 3D world that you never allow for 1-point and 2-point polygons. You got to delete them. They do you no good. All right, that's for another class. So thinking about classes, I will be teaching a 4-week class based on this stuff. And it starts this Saturday. It's through Hawaii PhotoCon, and Peter will actually put the link on there for you. He actually has the link. Let's see, Zimbo. Okay, Zimbo's asking, LightWave3D looks great. Seems to have lots of yes, it does. LightWave3D was the original industry standard program before Maya came along, and it's still around.
And speaking of Maya, we have a bunch of questions about that. The differences between ZBrush and Maya, why use one or the other?
Excellent question. ZBrush and Maya. Maya is a polygonal-based program. ZBrush is an organic-based program. Completely different workflow. Maya does have paintbrush capabilities, but it's mostly polygonal-based, where you create the polygons to make hard surface tanks and cars and buildings and stuff like that. ZBrush, as of late, can also do that because they've improved their software to do hard surface as well. But it's primarily a brush-based, stylus-based program, right? You have to work with a stylus. Whereas with LightWave or Maya, you don't have to have a stylus necessarily. You can work with a mouse. Hopefully that answers your question. So ZBrush, it lends itself more to organic modeling, like doing dinosaurs and human figures and worms and snakes and stuff like that. Although it can do hard surface modeling as well. They've improved its interface to allow for that as well. So if you're going to be in the industry, you have to know ZBrush. And of course, you have to know Maya. Also, another program you want to get serious about is Blender. Blender is starting to take over a lot of the Maya market. It's gotten that good. It is that good. Okay, all right. I'm gonna stop talking. I'm gonna export this out as an OBJ. So go to my export command right here. Let's see, where did it go? Let me see what I had here. Export, there we go, export OBJ. Let's see, I want to go to my desktop, go to my presentations folder, go to find my Wacom folder that I'm drawing from today, and I should have OBJ export. There we go, right there. And I tell you what, I'm going to put the crack ground number 5. There we go. Opened up the folder, OBJ, save it. Now let's go back to Photoshop. Guess what? Photoshop now sees it right there, OBJ. And click open. It's when this panel comes up, that means it sees it. It's a good thing. Click OK. There it is. Look at that. All right. If I go to the layers, I'm going to hit Option click on that eyeball, which means I can see only the debris. If I go to my 3D, the 3D panel comes up showing you what 3D objects you have in this 3D scene. There's a 3D layer. We know it's a 3D layer because it has that cube object in the bottom left-hand corner. So go to my bricks, and if I hit the V key for the move tool, there we go. Now you have a 3D navigational tools up here. And look at that 3D space. There's all my objects there. Pretty nice, huh? And I can make them larger or smaller, whatever I choose to do. I can bring these objects into Substance Painter and do something funky with them. Kind of interesting with those objects. But we don't have time because we only have like a few minutes left. Let's see, no questions. Yeah, GS1000, LightWave is great. It's absolutely wonderful. It's one of the easier programs to use, extremely powerful, one of the best renderers on the market. Good, I want to make sure that's sharing. That's looking at the other monitor there. It's one of the best renderers in the industry. So I highly recommend it. Very easy to learn compared to most other programs. Maya has become very good with modeling. Some people use Modo. Modo is nothing more than LightWave. Modo is they took the LightWave code and recreated Modo. All your shortcuts, workflow, and everything's the same. So I prefer LightWave because it's a lot more polished, improving. Animation, texturing, modeling, everything works flawlessly. The only problem I have is that New Tech that owns LightWave needs to put more documentations out on it. All right, now let's, I'm gonna start talking about LightWave. Now here's my debris. Okay, now let's turn everything back on. I'm gonna go back to my layers. And figure out how to utilize this. So I'll turn off those other debris layers, kind of give you an idea. I'm gonna turn that one off. And those are 3D layers too. I'm gonna go down over here and turn that one off, okay? So it's just leaving us with this one here. Okay, so the lighting is coming from the side, right? Where the lighting on this debris is coming from the front. And those are little things you always gotta pay attention to. So if I go to my 3D tab, I'm gonna make sure I'm in the 3D layer first. Now target the 3D tab, and I have the camera, the lights, the bricks themselves. So I'm gonna go to the lights, pull it over to the side. You see that? Now, if I get in closer, it might be a little easier for you to see. See what's happening here? Taking it from the side. Now, I might want to colorize the lights to match the lighting falling on the hand. I can just click directly on the hand itself, but I want a much more brighter, pure yellow coming through there. Maybe something like this.
And we have a relevant question that just came in while you're working.
You got it. Go for it.
Someone just asked, how would one overlay the flying bricks shown in the Photoshop 3D panel onto a photographic background and move it around to match the perspective in the photo?
Ah. Well, if you're talking about flying rocks, You don't really need to worry about perspective. They're kind of flying in midair, going in all different directions. In one respect. In another respect, you need to worry about perspective in that the size of the rocks. So if things are in the background, it's going to be smaller. I'm going to show that to you, actually. I was actually getting ready to show that. I wanted to modify the lights here. I'm going to increase the intensity of the lights, just so that you can kind of see the effect. Now, I'm going to answer the question in terms of perspective. If I come over here, because perspective is incredibly important. Let's go ahead and bring this down using spacebar, Optional O to zoom in and out. Taking the stylus, pressing down and moving back and forth with my Cintiq. F key, go to full screen mode. There we go. All right, I'll move this over a little bit. All right, I want to have some rocks in the background, honoring perspective, and I want to have some rocks in the foreground, honoring perspective. So if I take the rocks, this layer, and go back to my 3D panel, target the bricks, I have a 3D widget here. If I take the 3D widget and highlight that yellow center of the widget, I can make the rocks bigger and bigger. These are going to be the foreground rocks, okay? All right, now we want to make some background rocks. The technique for this is simply use your head, all right? Duplicate the layer. Take the other layer and let's make these small now. I'm going to turn off this one so we can see the difference. I'm going to go over here, target the bricks, and make them smaller, really small. Make them smaller like this because they're going to be in the background. Honoring perspective. I can go to my rotation option and rotate these around a little bit. Maybe I'll do something like this. Like, there we go.
So one can bring in a 3D element into a 2D photo in Photoshop and match the perspective?
Yes, the answer is yes, but there's going to be work on your part. If you want it to match true perspective, you have to take all of your primary points of focus in that photograph and put them on their own layer. So for example, you have a picture of a car and you want the debris to be behind the car. Well, you got to select the car out of the photograph and put it on its own layer so you can put the 3D objects behind that layer. There's work. It's not push a button and it's going to happen. All right. So that's what I've done here. Here are my layers. My hand's in one layer. This debris that I made smaller, I'm going to drag it to put it underneath my hand. I'm going to go find my hand somewhere down. There's the hand. Put it underneath the hand. Boom. See, it went behind the hand now. Right. There's my debris. Right. And if I want to, I can make it even smaller. Good. Now, what I want to do next is important. The debris in the background is going to be blurred a little bit, right? Because we're focused on the hand. So I'm going to change this 3D object to a smart object. Right-click on the right-hand side of the 3D object, convert to smart object. Once it's a smart object, I can go to my filter menu, blur, Gaussian blur. Oh, look at that. Now it looks like it's in the background. I don't want that much blur, but I can adjust the blur. Now it looks like it's in the background because it's shallow depth of field. It's blurred and it's way back there. Also, it may be darker in the background, right? Because it's not, the lighting is not, it's not hitting that straight on, or it's further in the back, so it maybe look like darker specks. So I can go to my image menu, adjustments, curves, and darken them up, however you want. They're in the background. Now go to my other ones in the above top layer, put those in the foreground. All right, it's honoring perspective. So there. I might even give the ones in the foreground a slight little motion blur. Let's say I like that, so I'll right click, smart object, filter, blur, motion blur. See, give it a slight little motion blur so it looks like they're moving up at an angle. And Let's give it a mask, layer mask. Hit the B key for the brush. There's my brush. And maybe I want to take some of these out. I don't want all these bricks to be covering up my hand. Maybe I want this brick here, right near the palm and near the thumb. I'm going to bring that down in size and just take those away using the mask. But I'll leave the other ones there. See? So now we're getting this sense of things, flying around the foreground, background. You can even have a middle ground. So hopefully that answered the question. That's how you would do it in Photoshop. If you're doing concept art, that's how you would work. Once you create your 3D object and you want to do a little more to it, make it a smart object. Utilize all your tools then. And say you want to go in here to the foreground, even modify these bricks, make them bigger, right? We can't anymore because they're no longer a 3D object. But you can double click on the smart object. It takes you into the 3D object. Now you got the 3D menu, target the bricks, right? Hit the V key, make the bricks even bigger. All right. And I'm going to go to Windows, Arrange, Tile Vertically so you can see them side by side. Right? The bricks are even bigger. I'll make them bigger. Even bigger. They're really coming out at you. All you need to do is hit Command S. Boom, look. Updates. So that's how you would work in the concept scene. Maybe, let me go move these back to the side. Maybe one of those bricks in the foreground is obscuring the hand too much, or maybe these up here. I like the one over here to the left, but these in front of the hand, don't like those. Go to my layers, go to my mask, hit the B for my brush. Now I have this set. Let me go in Photoshop. For my middle button, it's designed to resize my brush up and down. So if I go in Photoshop, grab a standard circular brush, the middle button is designed to make it bigger, right to left. I'm dragging my hand left to right, and then down for hard, up for soft. Down for hard, up to soft. The shortcut for that, to program in is Alt right click on a PC and Control Option left click on a Mac. That's one of the very few instances where the shortcuts are different. All right, so up and down, right, left, soft and hard. But I like my nice little, my little chalk brush here where I've got, tilt. So I'm kind of, sort of, lack of a better term, rotating the brush. Painting with black, getting in close. I don't want that brick there, paint it out. I don't want that brick there, paint it out. I don't want that brick here, paint it out. I'll leave this brick down here. I like that one. I think that's it. We're at 1:30. Any other questions?
Yes, we are. No questions now. If anybody has any last minute questions, put them in the Q&A and I'll pose them to Steve. Steve, do you have any Wacom classes coming up?
I do. I sent the link to Peter. And if Peter is there, if he would post the intermediate Photoshop with the Wacom tablet. And for those who are on Twitch, let's see if I can find that very quickly. So I just had it here. Yeah, there it is. Okay, I found it. So people who are on Twitch, I'm going to type in the link to the intermediate Photoshop for the Wacom tablet. It's what it's called. And you're welcome to go. It's a 5-week class. It's a 5-week class. We meet every week, one day a week, 7 to 9 in the evening. It's focused on the artistry of Photoshop utilizing the Wacom technology. It's designed to kind of take your work to the next level.
And somebody has a question about the Express Key remote. Are you using one with your Cintiq 22 right now?
The answer will be no, because Wacom hasn't sent me one yet.
It's not my fault.
No, that's right. No, it's not your department. blame everybody else for that one. We'll blame Tom.
Actually, let's blame Peter.
Okay, no problem. So yes, that's something else I meant to ask you guys about. So yes.
Okay. So how do people get in touch with you if they have questions after this or
All right. I've got
in general?
email. I've got an email address, steve@chromalution.com. Let's see, Pete should have that, but I'll be happy to just type it in here real quick. steve@chromalution.com. I'm typing it into the Twitch chat here, and then I will go over to the Zoom chat. All right. There we go. And I should have the chat box. Where's the chat box? Questions and answers. Questions and answers more. I think it's in here. Oh, there it is. That must be it there. No, that's just questions and answers. Wait a minute. Answer dismissed. Oh, steve@chromalution.com. How do I find the chat box in this damn thing? I think it turns it off when I'm the presenter. I can see your questions, but I can't find the chat.
It shouldn't. It's in the bottom middle.
The bottom middle. Okay, so I've got this. I've got it's one of these bars that appear and disappear on you. Let me see if I do. You are sharing the screen. We click on this.
Pete just got you covered, so he just put.
Good.
He just
Thank you,
up
Pete.
there. Yep.
I can't find a chat box in this thing.
Yeah. And you're even getting people that says your classes are awesome, which they are. Steve has presented many times at our booths around the country, and everybody loves Steve Burns.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
And I guess this is a good time to sign off. So thanks a lot, Steve. And
all right.
we'll have you on again soon. We're posting some specials at our friends at B&H in New York City. And also for those of you watching in Canada, Annex Pro is also offering some specials. So thank you very much, everybody, for coming. Thank you, Steve, for presenting. And
my pleasure.
We'll see everybody again.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.